So good morning to all of you, and thank you so much for being here and for joining this moment when we celebrate the cause of women. Tomorrow is Women's Day, but given that it's Saturday, we decided to schedule an event where we could all be together the day before. I'm going to start a very short words of introduction with a story for you. And I want to tell you the story of Maria Antonetta. Maria Antonetta is Peruvian. I met her 10 years ago. She was the widow of a Peruvian man. She was the mother of 3 Peruvian sons who had been killed by the Shining Light, this terrorist movement that destroyed so much of Peru. She probably had about 2 teeth left in her mouth. She didn't know how to read. And her living was about farming guinea pigs that she would then take to the market to get some money and then to be able to buy enough for her living. For many, many years, after men in her family had been killed, she was robbed, she was under violence, because of course people wanted to steal the cash that she was getting for the selling of the guinea pigs. When you see her on that photo with me, and she held my hand for about 3 hours that day, she showed me inside her skirt a little pocket that she had. And she explained to me that despite the fact that she couldn't read, that saved her life and helped her keep her money. What was that? It was a card that she could put into a cell phone. And that access to, not literacy yet, but access to means of payments that would protect her from domestic violence, and the fact that she could actually count and know where she was putting the money and where she was transferring it to earn some interest, actually made her a different person. And she was proud and confident. And for me, that epitomizes what can be achieved when there is a will and when there is a way to actually help those that are in trouble because they don't have access to finance or because they don't understand finance. She didn't know how to read, but she understood finance better than many other people. So this is Maria Antonetta for us. Now, of course, this is not the point of this beautiful time that we're going to spend together. So, equality in the world is under threat in the most unexpected corners. And advocating for women's access to literacy is also about fighting for equality. So that's what we are going to try to demonstrate this morning, and there's a fantastic panel of speakers whom you know very well. And I will try for myself to tell you how much it actually relates to what the central bank does. Because some of you might think, well, what has the central bank got to do with women's literacy and equal access to information and understanding and education? Well, it has a lot to do with it, actually. It has a lot to do in 2 respects, and I'm going to mention a few numbers which I'm sure an excellent professor who's sitting to my left will comment upon. But according to one of our great surveys, the ECB Consumer Expectations Survey that we started back in 2020, if you remember, women today account for 60% of those Europeans who lack basic financial literacy, which highlight a gender gap of 20 percentage points. Other surveys indicate that women are 7 percentage points less likely to set aside enough money to cope with emergency. So that means what? That women live longer, that women live poorer, and that women, like all those who lack financial literacy, are not capable of saving for the case of emergency. I'm sure you will be commenting on that later on. So it matters for central bank because what we are trying to achieve is improve productivity. That is more for the whole financial community, not specifically for central bank, but we have a keen interest in that because it can improve competitiveness and it matters for inflation. But our job is also price stability. And we know from the study, and I will leave my other companions on the panel to demonstrate it, but we know that for price stability to be achieved, people need to appreciate what is inflation, for instance, and they can better have inflation expectations, which otherwise could not be either measured or that they could not assess if they don't understand what it is that we are talking about. So this financial literacy of women is a direct link to the capacity to expect inflation, to understand inflation, and for us it is critically important because we rely on these inflation expectations and we rely on them remaining anchored, as I think we have achieved reasonably well in the last few years. So that's on the expectations front and on the price stability. On the productivity, clearly what we know is that we need more investment being made in not a deposit account, not just a saving accounts, but in financial instruments that will eventually be used to finance investment in Europe. You all have heard about the Commission proposal and the agreement of the European Council to finance massively defense. You rearm Europe, that's one thing. The German authorities have announced some decisions that will have to do also with investment. Well, if we have half of the population at a large disadvantage when it comes to understanding financial instruments, we are short of an access to savings that is otherwise half sleeping in a saving or deposit account. And for them to invest in those instruments that will be deployed to finance in defense, in infrastructure, in those key reforms that will improve our productivity, then we are at a disadvantage. Hence, the reason why central banks have a definite interest in making sure that financial literacy at large, but particularly financial literacy of women, given that they are at a disadvantage, actually improves over the course of time. It will help us doing a better job, and it will be helpful not just for the cause of equality, which is a moral imperative anyway, but also for our economies.